Hello, I am Peter, and I'm here with my co-host FanGirl. Hello, say hello to everyone.
Hey everyone!
We are joining you from two nearly opposite sides of the globe tonight to talk about some Black Panther comic books. It's week 3 of our Black Panther book club, and we're talking about issues 25 to 35 of the 1998 run, which was written entirely by Christopher Priest, and which heavily influences the new Black Panther movie. Now, Faria and I have both seen the movie, but we are not going to talk about spoilers until we are all done talking about this run, and then if time remains, we may get into the movie, but you are safe for now in our hands, only talking about the Black Panther comic book. All
Right,
we will
and
say is that I won't speak for Faria. I loved the movie. How did you feel? Yeah,
that's how I felt.
I
Like,
felt like
I
that, but with
loved
tears.
it. Sorry?
I felt like that with tears. I was like,
I know. I mean, it was just so emotional in a way that I couldn't even cry because I was just so shocked that how good it was. And then, and I'm on record because when I was on another live stream, I'm on record saying this is better than Iron Man when it comes to MCU solo movie. So come at me, nerds.
Well, we will get back to that if we make it through talking about this whole book. So just to recap, because maybe people are watching that haven't read before this, we have been reintroduced to T'Challa in this series in 1998. He starts out in a tenement apartment in New York City where he's investigating the murder of a young girl who was a child that was being sponsored by a not-profit organization that he was supporting from afar in Wakanda. And so this draws him to America, but a whole series of events goes down that kind of embroils him in the investigation in America and keeps him away from Wakanda, which is part of the point. And so multiple different people try to usurp his crown in Wakanda. First, there's what is the guy's name? The minister guy at the beginning?
Achebe.
Achebe.
Or
First
Achebe.
tries to usurp him, and then Eric Killmonger tries to usurp him shortly before we start this run here. So Wakanda's sort of in pandemonium. Killmonger has just been seemingly dispensed of, and we're opening up in issue number 25, which is a crossover issue into Maximum Security. And to set the stage here, Marvel had not been doing events like at all in terms of line-wide events for really since Onslaught, so since 1996. So this is 4 years later, and as a result, the books have become kind of insular and really not interacted as much. And I don't know that I would say that there's any interaction here, but this is one of the first times we really get Black Panther acknowledging a wider plot. At the same time, I sort of think that Priest was using it as a Deus Ex Machina to like shift out of some of the things he had been writing about and move the story in a different direction, because he gets a lot of stuff done very quickly in this Maximum Security issue.
Right. And is this the one, remind me, because it's been a while, is this the one where Storm shows up?
So Storm, Aurora Monroe, does show up in the closing panels of this, but what happens is that Maximum Security is about aliens being sequestered to Earth. Like, it becomes kind of their maximum security prison. And so they are all converging on the Wakandan Temple of the Dead, which turns out to be a portal to take people to another alien world. Like, they see it as an exit sign. And so Panther and Ross get caught up in that while some other stuff is happening too.
Right. So and I actually wanted to ask you a question about it. Like, I wasn't sure if this was as you mentioned that this was an event, so I didn't know that it was. So to me, it was like, while I was reading Black Panther, I'm like, wait, what's going on? Yeah. But then I got so used to now when it comes to reading Marvel, at least having like 14 events happen in like matter of like 40 issue run. I'm like, oh yeah, it was one of those events. It's okay, move on. Let's move on. But then when Storm showed up, I'm like, yay, we're back. So yeah, so to me it was kind of like one of those issues that I necessarily didn't like, even though the plots of it kind of becomes integral in the run later on, but the thing is, like, to me it was like, oh, okay, something happened.
Yeah, and that's because I read this issue by mistake for the last read, and then I reread it for this read, and I remember reading it last time and thinking like, This is so weird. None of this stuff matters. Why did Priest spend a whole issue on this? But it actually really does matter because it one of the things it does, it moves still after seeing the movie, I'm not great at saying her name. Okoye? Okoye. And she's my favorite character in the movie, but I'm so bad at pronouncing all words.
Right.
Okoye, it kind of moves Okoye off stage of the Dora Milaje in the book, and it makes the queen, the young girl from Chicago, the main Dora Milaje, which pays off in this run for sure. It also kind of like sweeps all the other Wakandan stuff like off the table. Like we stop seeing Ramonda, his mother. We stop seeing his huge BFF. Killmonger is supposedly dead. Like Priest really kind of clears the decks of all that Wakanda stuff. I think probably to avoid confusing readers that were coming in at this point. Because they were setting up for like a really big Marvel Universe-y arc, and they were going to have Storm, and they knew they were going to have a lot of new readers, and I think they wanted to like really trim down the level of intrigue that had been happening up to this point. I don't know. Did you get that sense? Am I just projecting?
No, I mean the thing is like I feel like this is where the cutoff point began, where that they stopped showing Wakanda and T'Challa versus they started showing King T'Challa versus the world. So if you know what I mean, because the rest of it kind of, even though he is trying to save Wakanda and all of that, but it's very much like, establishing him in Marvel Universe. Like that's how I felt, because, a lot of more characters from Marvel Universe comes in. Like you have your Doom, Namor, how do you say
I think
it?
it's Namor.
Like,
I think most people say Namor.
Anyway,
the guy with
the guy with the wings on his feet. So that guy, Magneto shows up, then all these like characters kind of they had like a powwow moment, and then Tony Stark loses his mind at some point because as he always does. I'm not a big Tony Stark fan.
No, me neither.
So anyway, so all of that happened. So it's mostly like you stopped kind of seeing Wakanda and King T'Challa in that way, and you start seeing Black Panther with Marvel Universe more. So I think this is kind of very good cutoff point if you want to kind of see it two separate sides of him.
I completely agree with you. And the other thing I think that is, pardon me, part of what I found. Thank you. They don't say that here. My wife has said, in the States you would say bless you or whatever your custom is. If you're on the bus or something, if somebody sneezes here and you say something, we say "a tes souhaits," which is French. It's like to your wishes. If you're on the bus and you say any of them, people are like, "Why are you talking to me? I sneezed." There's just no custom around saying something after somebody sneezes here.
Welcome to New Zealand Custom Talk with Maria and Peter.
It's all, they all speak English, although sometimes they don't always know what they're saying, but I am a stranger in a strange land. So apparently fans at the time had been clamoring to get Storm in. So Marvel Team Up 100, which was many moons before the story, had established that adolescent-aged Black Panther and Storm, Ororo Munroe, had a brief relationship, and this would have been in the period that Storm was kind of a goddess in Africa long before her X-Men days. And other than that, they really had not been shown to interact very much. But to be fair, Black Panther had not been in a lot of comic books in this period. So there wasn't like there was a lot of chance for all these big Storm and Black Panther scenes. And part of what I found a little strange about it is like the amount of romantic entanglements that he's in at this point, but they're all very surface level. Like he's got like the Nakia turning into Malice thing because he kissed her by mistake. He's got, his jazz singer American lady who just wants to be left alone. Monica. Now we've got Storm, and it starts to just feel like all these women are just like on a merry-go-round. But the point is, he isn't really treating them like romantic objects. He takes them all very seriously and takes their counsel pretty seriously. And so I kind of like had one of these moments of like, well, if this was any other comic, I'd really be annoyed at how all these women are just all romantic interests. But in Black Panther, actually, it's not really bothering me that much.
Well, I think like it's got something to do with the fact that they got their own thing going on. I think like a lot of the time, especially the reason I don't.
Oh, we're getting your crazy robot voice from last time. Do you remember when you had crazy robot voice?
I am turning into a robot. Can you hear me now?
It sounds fine. Yeah, it sounds fine.
No, I was just saying that one of the reasons I really didn't like the Green Lantern Jeff Johns run is because I feel like all the ladies live to serve Hal Jordan, and even though he doesn't deserve it, like, you're like, okay, he's just like, oh, what's so cool about him? Like, there's nothing given, like, but I feel like when it comes to Black Panther, because he's so cool and he got all these things going on, and he's like, so I feel like I understand why these ladies will be into him, but at the same time they're not. They're just kind of, they got their own thing going on, and he's just there, and they just have an interaction with him. I think very much like Batman too, because Batman, like, all the women in Batman's life, they got their own things going on, and then kind of have an interaction with him. So for some reason, I'm not feeling like, similar to you, I don't actually feel like, oh my god, all these ladies are romantic interest. I don't know how to say it.
No, I'm the same way. Like, I feel I've been reading a lot of current DC lately, and it feels like a lot of the male characters have like a different love interest in every book. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like Flash has Iris in his book, but then he's got the other woman that was working at the lab with him. But then in Justice League, he's got this on and off again thing with Jessica Cruz. And then I feel like there's like another other book where he has like some other flirtation. And I'm like, are all of these people not coordinating with each other? I know Flash can be in a lot of different places in a really short amount of time. But it seems like he's dating like 5 or 6 different women at certain points, and it just starts to annoy me. Not because I feel like the women are being made as objects; they're all actually being written very well. But it starts to send this message that like a woman can only be in a male superhero's plot if she's a romantic, if she could be seen as a romantic object, even if she has a lot of agency and she's a powerful character. And I think that you and I both objected at the beginning of this run to that. That's kind of what the Dora Milaje was. It was like women specifically there to be romantic objects. But I think Priest has sort of moved away from that at this point, even though they're all still romantic objects in a way. It doesn't feel like that's
Right.
the primary reason they're there anymore.
Right. And I don't know, like, there's a lot to talk about. Like, I can go on and on about women in comics and blah blah blah. But the thing is, like, I'm not educated enough in comics to kind of talk about this. My personal view of it is that if it makes sense, I guess it's okay. But the thing is, like, I don't know if someone like Flash or someone like Hal Jordan, women would be falling over a hill for them. Like, it just, like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't. That's why I'm like, ugh, whatever. And Flash is fast. I mean, we can talk a lot about other stuff, we can make a lot of jokes about that. I don't think women will like someone who is very fast. There, I said it. But anyway, back to Black Panther.
Back to Black Panther. So, but what Storm brings to this that I don't know that we've had to this point, and she's only in it for 2 issues before she departs, is that she, or maybe 3, is that she brings, I won't say a maternal instinct because that's its own set of stereotypes, but she brings like a certain compassion as a ruler, right? She's been treated as a goddess and she's been put in charge of people and she's led the X-Men. And so she feels like one of the few characters we've seen in this run that T'Challa's really willing to treat as an equal, other than maybe like Captain America earlier. And he still like really double crosses Captain America. And so I feel like he like takes Storm's compassion really seriously, and that has like an impact on other characters too. Like we get Storm hanging out then with Queen, the young Dora Milaje, and I feel like Storm then has an impact on Queen, and Queen starts acting really differently after she hangs out with Storm. Like she's much more forthright with her emotions, and she's much more accepting of the fact that like she's got a part in this in Wakanda. And so I just think that Storm ultimately really transforms the run, and that's why she's become such a powerful character in Black Panther over the years, after this being her like relatively first appearance in a Black Panther comic book, is that she brings an element, a different level of sovereign to the run that he doesn't have on his own.
Right. And at the same time, I feel like she was there to kind of remind him a little bit, because I feel like he was kind of slipping a little bit too much into like, he was starting to mope a little bit. And then she came back and like, hey, stop it. Stop, like snap out of it. So I think she even mentions it, that his friends called her. Like, doesn't she mention it that his friend called her? So she kind of fulfills one of those things, like come to kind of remind him that what he's capable of and who he really is. And she also kind of parts with a warning that don't become like Magneto, pretty much. Like, you know,
Yeah,
you were
that was.
like,
I mean, we know that X-Men is my jam,
right,
and that
right.
moment was really just huge, a huge moment. Like, has Black Panther become like Magneto in these 25 issues?
No, but that's what she was talking about. That don't, because you know Magneto. So I am unlike you. I am not a Magneto expert or X-Men expert. But my understanding of Magneto solely comes from the movies. You know, and the movie's done an excellent job, if nothing else, to portray Magneto. And from my understanding of it is like he kind of is very much of like, like, you know, he's like, I don't want to say Malcolm X to Martin Luther King, you know, but he's very much of like, oh, we need to be our own. And, you know, I think he also created Genosha and all of that. Like,
well, he takes it over. It has a terrible history.
Right.
But
Okay. So there's like a long,
yeah. He actually
long,
holds the
complicated
entire
history.
world hostage and threatens to crash every plane in the sky. And after he's finally cornered by the X-Men, they pretty much come to a draw, and the UN awards him Genosha to like get him out of their hair. That's kind of what happened in the year prior to this.
That's a very interesting story. But anyway, so the thing is, like, I feel like he like, you know, before when she tells him that, me with a limited knowledge of Magneto, even I was like, oh, you know what? She brings a very good point, because he was actually becoming very Wakanda only, or I need to do this. And just before that, he did crash to world economy in order to protect Wakanda. So taking that into account, you are like, I mean, you know, that's true. Like, it is kind of like, okay, you are slowly becoming this other person. And you and him said the exact same thing, but don't become like him. So, and it actually comes back. I'm not sure. I don't remember whether it was between here, but he keeps on remembering this again and again. I think in the third volume. So this is not. This was a very emotional for him as well. Like, you know, he remembers it a lot.
And I don't think it occurs to him all at once, because then we move into the next arc, which is probably I'll say my favorite arc that I've read in this series so far, from different reasons. And he's still acting in that Magneto way. You know, the Magneto credo is the ends justify the means, and the ends is the safety of the mutant race, and he'll do anything. Right. He'll kill anyone. He'll do any immoral thing. It doesn't matter. And I think that we've seen that from T'Challa here, like, as you not only crashing the world's stock markets, but that he's always like so many steps ahead, only so that he can keep Wakanda stable. And we've seen him sacrifice relationships with the Avengers. We've seen him sacrifice the world economy. We've seen him, you know, like have conflict within his own family, because he's of that ends justify the means methodology. And in a way, like, I feel like Storm counterbalances that as another potential monarch, where she's more of an Xavier, not just because she's trained by him, but because she cares about people. She comes from a point of empathy. And so then we move into this next arc, which starts with issue number 27, where we get a very different array of leaders, none of whom is an Xavier, because we get this alien dude from the, what the heck are they called? The Deviants, Lemuria. And then we get Dr. Doom, and then we get Namor. And then also Magneto is in the mix. So it's like, which one of these dudes is the biggest ego? These are like the four biggest egomaniacal kings of their respective fiefdoms in the entire Marvel universe.
Right. And I think it was after that arc that I actually started, like, you know, before that I was like, oh, okay, T'Challa's kind of cool. After this arc, I'm like, oh my God, he's the coolest cat in town. Because, you know, as I'm forgetting his name, Ross himself mentioned, is like, oh yeah, so all these people came and, you know, they kind of threatened him that, you know, we're going to take some action. And my client just stifled a yawn and carried on. And to me, that is like, I'm like, yes, that's him. Like, you know, by then I was so on board with T'Challa and Ross and everything. I'm like, yep, that's T'Challa. Like, you know, if someone at that point told me, oh, you know what, all these people came and they did this, and then he just stifled a yawn, and I'm like, I can see that. So yeah, so to me it was like a very joyful occasion, and just to see like how he manipulates all these people, and then it was all about a child that was like a
Yeah,
Wakandan.
once again, just like the first arc, it all comes back. So it shows that he is compassionate at his base. And this is not even a
Right,
Wakandan child, but
right,
Storm gets him to have that compassion. And so it's almost like
right.
an echo of the first arc, where in the first arc he's so concerned with Wakanda that he almost forgets like that the child was a person. It's kind of, she's just part of the trigger that is the catalyst for these events. But in this arc, it's like very much about the child, and he almost doesn't care what happens to the nation states at points.
Right. And the thing is, like, remind me of what's the story behind the child, because she wasn't an Wakandan origin, was she? Or
No.
she?
So
So what's
the best I could understand, having just read it, is her mother is a deviant who lived under the sea near the
right?
Atlantis, and this guy who's in charge of the deviants has her as a bastard child, and her mother tries to get her to the Death Temple in Wakanda to
Uh
go
huh.
through the gate because she's trying to get the child away from, because she knows the child will be killed. And so she gets
Right.
wrangled as if she's like any other alien, but really she's just one of these. The whole point of the deviants is like every generation is like a whole new species. They are so genetically diverse that no two of them are the same ever. And so she's
Right.
recognized as an alien in the wake of maximum security, but really she's fleeing. She's trying to get her child to safety. And so then this child becomes this big power play. The child like doesn't even really represent anything. They have some psychic powers. They do a body swap with Storm at one point, but like the child, it's more about the way that this deviant ruler is
Right.
ruling the nation, and much less that the child is some special MacGuffin with powers.
So is Deviant a part of like a Namor's like rogue gallery, or he's just some, or some other Marvel lore? Because I'm like I said, I'm not very well versed in Marvel world.
I was actually somewhat surprised by their appearance here, because I'm aware of them, but I don't know what they're from or their story.
Okay.
And I think this is actually the other thing that I wanted to get into in this arc is, we talked a lot in the last episode how it was Priest's love letter to 70s Marvel, right? It was all these
Right.
great 70s characters. But this is like a love letter to like anything that's ever been related to any kind of Wakanda plot or near Wakanda, or we get this thing about the vibranium all exploding in recent Captain America issues. We get the Wakandan member of Fantastic Four, a comic that probably nobody was waiting to be followed up upon on that point, re-entering the plot here. We get these deviants called back, and I think that they had maybe been in like Heroes for Hire recently. Like, Priest is just pulling in all of this continuity, and neither of us have read it, and it's like not even important that we've read it, but I always
No,
think it's
it's
like
not.
fun to see like, oh, this came from somewhere. Like that just makes me
Right.
excited, because then if I really want to go and read it, I can go and read it, rather than an author who like is just feeling like they need to make all this stuff up from scratch. Like, you don't have to. Marvel puts out thousands of comic books. Like, go find some plot to pick up.
Right. And that's a very good point. Like, even though I'm asking you all these questions, it's just because I'm curious, not because like, oh my God, I didn't understand anything what happened. There's never been a point of like that, because ultimately what the story was about is to show that how T'Challa as a leader deals with other leaders in Marvel Universe. That's pretty much what it was. And then there was also a little bit of commentary about UN or US or whoever you can say, like, like miscommunication among government, because people just started pointing nukes at each other, and the things got very heated at one point, and then then T'Challa, as usual, was always ahead of the game, and then had a plan, and then everything was kind of resolved.
Part
So
of yeah, and part of what causes all that to happen, the whole like nuclear armament, is Claw getting inserted into the
right,
situation. And
right,
that was not, he was inserted by means outside of the actual conflict. But what I find interesting is that if we didn't have Claw involved and we were just looking at these four actors, you have Dr. Doom, who's known as a despotic fascist ruler and a terrorist. You have Namor, who in canon had tried to drown all of New York. and has a lot of people who would be happy if he was just gone. And then you have Magneto, who again is known as this terrorist and murderer. He's blown up submarines of nation states. He's taken over countries. And then you have T'Challa, who, in terms of this crowd, has a pretty positive rep. And it's like very interesting to see the world very quickly turn on him due to Claw's actions here. And I found myself asking as a reader, like, is that because the world has grown so cynical about all of these king men that all it takes is one thing for them to lose faith? Is it a lack of faith in any superhero that leads the nation? Or, like, I don't know. I couldn't decide for myself. Or is it because he's in league with these other guys that none of them trust, and so he gets painted with this broad brush? Because it seems like public opinion turns really hard, really fast against T'Challa over the course of this arc.
But it's also because of fear of the unknown, like T'Challa, no one knows anything about him. He always kind of keeps his own counsel. Just before this plot, he actually ruined the world economy, pretty much. So public opinion was not there with him to begin with. And also because in the first arc, when the child dies under his care, so that's where it started. I think we talked about it in the previous episodes that the priest starts sowing the seeds of these little things, but then as plot progresses, you kind of see more how they they flourish and then it all comes together. That's kind of his motto. Every story begins with that story thus far, and as you were reading it, all the plot threads kind of comes together, especially in the third volume. From minute one, it was like it ends at the end, it begins at the end, and then at the end it all comes together. So it's kind of pretty similar to that. So I don't think I think about it most of if I wasn't kind of reading Black Panther's point of view or knew anything about him, there was this guy who was doing all these things. How would you react, right?
Right.
So it's more nuanced and complicated than than what we can discuss in an hour time frame.
Yeah, but I think the thing you brought up there is really powerful, and I think because you read it in a closer grouping where I'm really portioning it out week to week, that it was much more obvious to you that that's the whole point of this priest run. It's not only I keep saying I think the point of it is that he's a king and not a superhero, which I was very gratified to see Everett K. Ross make that point on panel here, as you promised me that I would get to see. But I think your point is just as interesting, which is this is his coming out to the world. He's been known as a hero, but he's not really been seen as a king, and this is his coming out as a king, and this run establishes all the kind of ways that Marvel Universe feels about him, and that goes on, and he continues to make decisions that are more Magneto and some decisions that are more Xavier in the 20 years since this comic originally came out. But this is the baseline. And anytime you have some human in the United States in the Marvel Universe reacting to T'Challa's actions, they're going to be like, well, there was that time he crashed the stock market, and there was the time that kid got killed, and there's the time he's tainted already.
Yeah, and also remember
the world stage.
And also remember that humans in Marvel are pure trash, because their treatment of X-Men kind of shows you something. They're not very balanced people. Let's just say that. Well, somehow they're okay with a super soldier, just running around with a shield, but then there's a teenage kid climbing a building, but God forbid there are mutants. It's a bizarre world. Let's not talk about it.
You ever think that the population must be higher, or that people must have more kids or something, because there's always millions of people dying, right? Every one of these events is and then Las Vegas exploded, and then the Eastern Seaboard was drowned, and then everybody's at the next event protesting we hated you when you did that, and you're where did all these middle-aged people come from? Didn't they all just drown or get exploded or something? So it's the turnover is really high. It's just one of those things about the fighting time scale that just kind of works itself out behind the scenes.
I am still baffled that there's anyone who lives in New York City in that universe.
Why would you live in the Marvel New York City?
Yeah, you shouldn't live Marvel New York City, and you should not live in Gotham. Just get the hell out of there. But
I would live in the plainest, flattest town that has no historical significance.
Even then, you're not you're even then you're not safe because that's the start of Civil War because there's like new
You're right.
warriors. I even though I say that I don't know much about Marvel, I
No, you
kind of
know you're
know a
right.
lot. But the thing is like it's like that's the start of like new like Civil War. But anyway, we're really digressing. But the thing is,
Well, no, I think this is a huge
yeah,
part of this because I don't know that a lot of comic books give the platform to think about this because the whole Marvel universe is pretty much centered on the United States for the most part. And DC is making a plot point out of this right now in Doomsday Clock, where they're like starting to say that there's a public backlash against the idea of like superhumans being an American phenomenon. And that like
finally.
96% of superhumans are Americans. I don't think I'm like spoiling anything about Doomsday Clock, but it's a plot point that's simmering under. And I've always kind of had that about Marvel. And Black Panther is one of the few books that allows you to have a perspective that's outside of that, other than saying, oh, well, intergalactic. Usually it's like United States or intergalactic. And
Right.
and Black Panther says, or Wakanda.
Right. And yeah, there's a lot to do. I can talk about like all the or like all the holes in like Marvel and DC because it brings a lot of joy for me. And I'm not nitpicking, but it's just like it's fun to talk about these things. So, but yeah, one of the things I do like I'm always kind of surprised by Marvel humans in Marvel. Like it's like oh my god, mutants, but hurrah for all these other superheroes. Like pick one. Like you can't just be of both mind. But anyway, but the thing is like I'm not surprised that these humans in Marvel world all of a sudden just turned on a superhero because of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I was mostly, and the thing is, I kind of see their point because he just did all of these things. So by the time this event comes around, it's like, okay, hold on, stop the clock right there. So yeah,
And so he Black Panther, with the help of Everett Ross being in this undersea country with the deviants, manages to stave off what is about to turn into World War III.
right,
Because you have and now the U.S. is involved. So you have these three crazy dictators, Black Panther, and also the United States Army involved in, and they managed to talk it down. But in talking it down, Black Panther becomes embroiled in more of a personal problem because Claw is unleashed on him, and he has a visually stunning fight with Claw in the middle of New York City. Now, maybe this is just because I like comics that have a lot of pink in them. For some reason, the color pink on the
mhm,
printed page for me, especially with T'Challa on it too, just like pops off the page. But this fight
right,
is awesome. It's probably my favorite fight that's been in this comic so far. And it's pretty epic, and it raises an interesting philosophical question, which is like, of course T'Challa hates Claw because in Marvel continuity, Claw killed T'Challa's father. But
right.
why does Claw hate T'Challa so much? And we don't get an answer directly in this fight, but what did you think about that? And how like that's the speculation of the people who are watching the fight happen. I guess in Everett's speculation in the report he's writing about it.
I think Claw is probably like to Claw it was like oh he wanted to go and get all this vibranium and then T'Challa and his father just stopped it. So it's like it on his side. I don't think there's anything more to talk about. Like to me at least, I didn't think it was any more compelling than that. Like it was just like oh he's just another like another like villain who wanted to go and get all this gold and didn't get it, and this is the person that's stopping him from doing it all the time. And that's why he just keeps on coming back and try to haunt this person. um, I don't remember whether did they show like Achebe being behind this as well.
If they did, it must be past this volume because I
Oh,
don't
okay. So
think
it's
I've
it's
seen it
not
yet.
on this one because I think like there was like he's between Achebe, Claw, and Killmonger, these three seems to always kind of have something against him. Like they want to defeat him, and they just keep on coming back, and they somehow one is manipulating the other to kind of get to that. So but to me, it wasn't anything more than that's just like he's just a villain hellbent. Like same, very similar to Joker. Why is Joker always after Batman?
Right.
Like
Yeah,
you
I
know,
think Claw's almost like lost the plot. Like his quest to have vibranium, and also because ultimately Black Panther was the one who like turned him into a sound creature, as we saw
Right.
way back in Fantastic Four 53 by Lee and Kirby. So he's got a grudge. I mean, he
Right.
does fairly have a grudge, but I feel like it's almost like he's lost sense of that original grudge, and it's like metastasized to just hating Black Panther and like always being reincarnated to just chase right after Black Panther again, which Ross makes light of in the fight of like, if you were a villain and you just got resurrected from the last time you died, would you
Right.
immediately just chase after your marquee hero again?
Right.
You
No.
know, so even within the book, they're kind of poking a little bit of fun at this idea of like why are they even fighting? It's a construct, and we're getting sort of like a breaking the fourth wall Deadpool style commentary on like, this is actually kind of silly.
Right. And I think like, Pris does that a lot though, because he always talks about like, the super, like, for example, like, we talked about it last episode, like, someone falling in the vet of cream or a cream of, it's falling into something and getting superhero. So Pris does that a lot, making this kind of little like commentary on things. And I really enjoyed them. But, beyond that, I didn't put much thought into them. And you're talking about like this fight being so awesome. There's another one in book 3 that's gonna blow your mind even more. Yes, and I think it's issue number 33, 37, issue 37 or something. It's a really good one.
I'm very excited to see who the fight will be with. So I want to bring to light a specific issue here, Black Panther 30.
Yes.
And I think if there's people who are watching this who have seen the movie or just saw the movie or want to see the movie, and they're like, tell me about Black Panther in one issue. I don't want like a lot of fights. I just want to like get the vibe of Black Panther in one issue. I think you go to Comixology.com or you go on Amazon and you search for Black Panther 1998 number 30, because I think this issue really encapsulates who he is. He's not on trial so much as he's like testifying at Congress, and in defending him, Ross gives this amazing monologue, which I have to read some because Faria's been telling me about it for weeks now, and I got there and I was so excited. So they say, Madam Chairman, my client does. Mr. Ross, aren't you making our point for us that your client poses a continual threat to public safety and perhaps national security? And Everett K. Ross, who's played by Martin Freeman in the movie, says, absolutely. The guy's dangerous, Madam Chairman. This man we'd written off for years, which really happened in the Marvel Universe when he disappeared, suddenly reappears, Priest making a breaking the fourth wall commentary here, and makes an ungodly mess of our lives. How dare he? What kind of hero employs cunning and misdirection? Who is he to question our motives and values? What kind of an avenger of superhero can this guy be? Answer, he's not a hero at all, super or otherwise. The guy is a king, Senator, of a sovereign nation. He doesn't need us. The guy doesn't owe us any explanations. The cat suit isn't a costume. It's a habit, a ceremonial vestment of a tribal rank. He's not Captain America. He's not Iron Man. He doesn't answer to you. He's Namor without attitude. And hey, I don't see you dragging Namor in for any blasted inquiries. And it goes on, but I just was like, Priest is just telling it. This is the whole point of Black Panther, and he showed us for 30 issues so we could get to this realization on our own, as I have many, many times. And then he like lays it out in case you had any question that this is not a superhero comic book, and Black Panther is not a superhero.
Right. And can you show me that page?
Yes, gladly, because it's
beautiful. Yes. So the one on the one with the whole him standing up, that side over there, I use that as my thesis, like, as my picture for my review what I posted in the Omnibus Collectors group. I just use that. I'm like, this is what it was all about. This is what the whole Priest run is all about. That page summarizes everything. That page, and then if you start like the first couple of pages in volume 3, this is it. This is the thesis statement of the whole series. And was this issue where he calls Captain America his brother?
He does, which I found very affecting.
If that happens in MCU, Peter, I'm already, oh my God.
You have to bring us a fan.
I need that to happen. I need that to happen. But I loved it because, it was really, and to be honest, I completely see these two characters to be like that. That if it was like anyone else and you're like, what is going on? I mean, I'm sorry you tried to keep a PG-13, but yeah, it's like, what the F is going on, right? But between these two characters, that moment, I am on board. I bought it. I mean, I'm like, if nothing else, this two character would be like this. So yeah, so and that the fact that it made you like, he Priest created this character and then made it to that point that you are on board with these kind of choices that they make with other characters, it's actually a very, like, that to me is like a good characterization.
Yeah. And so this issue alludes to a history between Captain America and Wakanda that is hidden from view.
Right. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. because it was during World War II. Captain America is charged with a mission to go to Wakanda and investigate the reports of this country that maybe has a powerful resource in the shape of vibranium, and ultimately it's how Cap comes away with his originally vibranium enforced shield. Now, of course, this never really happened in the scope of World War II era Captain America comic books because Black Panther wasn't invented until 1966. Right. But this has been something that's been retroactively slinked into continuity, and now it doesn't work that it would be T'Challa anymore because he can't be that old, and so it's actually his father that ultimately Captain America had this encounter with. And it actually was just, if you don't know anything about it, it's in this amazing issue that we're talking about, Black Panther number 30 from 1998. And also there's a series out right now from Marvel called Rise of the Black Panther that's being supervised by Ta-Nehisi Coates, but it's been written by Evan Narcisse, who's really good. And it has amazing, amazing artwork. And it's focusing on these kind of formative moments that we've heard a lot about and seen in flashback, but we've never just sat down and looked at the whole story. And the first issue, which was out last month, is kind of T'Challa's father's life and how he married T'Challa's mother, not his stepmother Ramonda, but his actual birth mother, and his encounter with Captain America. And the issue is like a perfect 5-star comic book. It was incredible. So I have this very fresh in my head right now.
I'm so looking forward to the trade version of that.
It was really good. Really, really good. The second issue was good. It's just a high quality comic book.
I think the trade is already coming out like in June or July or something like that. But I think now now that the movie made like $800 billion, I think they're just gonna publish everything Black Panther like as soon as. But the thing is, what I was saying that I read that issue, I loved it, and one of the things that like this, I'm talking about this one. I haven't read the other one you were talking about, but I, as a MCU fangirl, I love them despite all their flaws and everything. I understand all the criticism about them, but I still love them. I was like, how amazing it would have been if in the montage of the Captain America and the first Avenger, they actually alluded to this. If Wakanda was introduced in that point versus like, having to do that in the Age of Ultron. I don't know. I just kind of
put a pin in that because here's what I think we're going to do. I think we're going to spend the next 8 minutes talking about the last arc here, and then we're going to shut down this video and start a new one on the same channel. If you just go to my channel, you'll see it, and then we're going to talk full spoilers about the movie for like 25 minutes. Okay?
Oh yeah, I know. I'm talking.
No, but I want to start with that because I think that has to do with. I want to put a pin in that.
Okay.
So,
putting a pin on it.
I know. We really want to talk about the movie. So there's one final arc here, and it's probably my least favorite arc for a couple of different reasons. So Nakia, who is very, very different here than other conceptions you might have of her in the media this week. In this run, she's a Dora Milaje who Black Panther briefly kisses by mistake. Mephisto tricks him into kissing her. And if Black Panther shows any kind of physical affection to any of the Dora Milaje in this comic book run, he's effectively proposing marriage to them. But he's like, takes these backsies when he kisses her, and that's not really how it goes. So Nakia becomes disgraced, and she goes kind of crazy, and she becomes Malice, who's this like kind of semi-super soldiery, super vengeful woman who's now using sex as a weapon to kind of seduce men and make them be under her control. And her goal is to ruin everything about T'Challa, not just Wakanda, but she wants to ruin his relationships, his friendships. She wants to just totally shatter his life in true like crazy stalker fashion, unless he will commit to being in love with her. Did I catch us up okay on that?
You did, and honestly, it was one of, like you said, it was not my most favorite one, and I was like, yeah, it was a little bit cringy at moments because there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't think neither of us are culturally, we can speak to it because there's a lot to talk about. Like, okay, like there's a cultural aspect of Dora Milaje and how they're treated, and la di da di da, and then how she perceives it, and And we talked about it last episode, I think, that it's like it's not all that it's cracked up to be, because because of the fact that she was chosen as a young, like, she's still underage. She's like, I think she's 16, and the
Yeah,
fact
they're
that she
all
was
between
chosen,
like 16 and 18 here. None of them are
right,
adults.
she was chosen when she was a child, and the fact that she was brainwashed into thinking that this is your life and stuff like that, and then all that other things happen. I don't think, to me, I can't quite say that, oh yeah, she was a villain, because she's not. She's a child. She's a very broken person. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like, let's not talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I don't really want to talk about that aspect of it much more. What the one thing that I think is somewhat interesting about this is we get what is his name? We get White Gorilla. And we finally get this arc with Queen,
Right.
the third Dora
Right.
Milaje, that comes to a head. But the problem I found that I kept having with it is it kind of like stopped being about Black Panther at some point. Like, I just was reading these issues and I'm like, Dakota North, which is like a great 80s deep cut. She's like the original Jessica Jones before there was a Jessica Jones. And like, there's just all this cool stuff going on.
Thank you for that, because I was thinking that. I'm like, who is this character?
She had a mini series in like the late 80s that Marvel's about to collect, so she must turn up somewhere in the MCU or in the Netflix sometime this year. But it was really proto Jessica Jones. She had her Dakota North investigations. She's this brunette private investigating chick. Like, it was totally Jessica Jones.
Right, and the thing is, I at first thought that she's Black Widow. I don't know why.
Too, because she looked just like Black Widow in the first time.
She looks like Black Widow, and then I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, there's Black Widow, and then like, oh, I'm Dakota North, and I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, okay, she's apparently an established character too, or like a C-list or D-list character as well.
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
she goes away for like decades at a time.
Right, and the thing is that the one of the things that's important though is the Jabari tribe. They're introduced in this arc, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's kind of important in the sense, like what we saw in the movie. Like, they show up in the movie. Oh, sorry.
So here's Dakota. Here's Dakota North looking exactly like Black Widow. Like, come on, dude, that's not fair. That's what Black Widow looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, but the thing is, like, so that's the kind of like the introduction of Jabari tribe, and then how Queen Justice Divine is kind of include, like, it's incorporated in the whole Wakanda, kind of comes to a head in this, like, it's introduced in here and explored more in volume 3.
Right. And it really just goes to show, like, I get upset because it's not about Black Panther, and I don't love when a comic that's a solo comic that has a great cast then kind of like stops paying attention to the main character. It really just bugs me. I love when a solo comic acknowledges that it doesn't have to play every scene with that character. Like, I feel like Spider-Man can be like that sometimes, where it's just like every scene has Spider-Man, and I'm like, dude, he's got a whole supporting cast. Like, we can cut away from him for a minute, and so I like that about this. But I just felt like it was starting to get like a little bit trivial. Like, we were with the vibration guy from Fantastic Four, so I had no positive feelings about. And then there's a lot of stuff with Queen, which is like kind of starting to make sense. And then we're spending a lot of time with White Gorilla and Dakota North. And I was just like, where is the Black Panther in this Black Panther comic book?
And I was thinking the whole time that I'm like, well, I'm just reading it in the trade paperback where I have all the issues. Right. People who are reading it issue by issue,
sure that it's going somewhere. Monthly must have been a slog.
Exactly. Like, I was like, well, okay. But anyway, to be honest, though, I don't know. We're not going to be doing volume 3, but I really, really recommend everyone to read volume 3 because it's perfect, and it kind of brings the whole Black Panther by Pris to a full circle. There's a very good, like, one of the issue is like one of the best fight scenes. You were talking about fight scenes, the best fight scenes ever. The volume 3 begins with another homage to Batman, and which I was like, oh, that was so delightful. And we get to see, and even some Asgardian guests also shows up as guest starring. So I would really recommend everyone to read volume 3. I haven't read volume 4 yet, but volume 3 is kind of like, it was a very good, like, complete circle.
So I guess this is a good point to say, we've now in a span of 15 days have talked about 35 comic books. Black Panther, Christopher Priest, which neither of us have ever read before. You kept reading past me. I'm still only here at issue 35. And next week, we're not reading Christopher Priest anymore. As you just said, we're actually skipping ahead over 15 years to 2016 to read the first 12 issues of Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, which is also very influential in the movie. So before we sign off and switch to movie chat, I would love to hear, like, sum up, what surprised you about this Priest run, and what have you really taken away from it about Black Panther that you never had before?
So give me just a second to find my thoughts, because I actually have this written.
Priya
So
has prepared remarks, folks.
I have remarks, you guys. Okay,
so she's prepared.
Yes. So first of all, my mind was literally blown. So it was like, that emoji where it's like half the head is gone. I was like that. I mean, like, I went in thinking this is gonna be a superhero, and very much like Ross and how he kind of have that 1-page summary. T'Challa is not a superhero. If you are going in wanting a superhero, stop. This is not for you. Don't come in here, because he's above and all, he's a king. He's cunning. He is very, he's not very, he's heroic, but he will do anything for Wakanda. And that, to me, is like, I don't think that has been explored in other comics or like other characters. So it's like, it's amazing. To me, I was very pleasantly surprised. And especially if you go to the third volume, there are certain things that he talks about, and you're like, that's okay, that's interesting. So yeah, to me, that was like, something that, and he also has his flaws, and that makes him very compelling. Then the other thing is, like, he's how Batman like he is. And the thing is, like, I kept on saying it again and again, that he would be the character that Batman seeks out. So it's not just like, they're not going to be just head to head or having a cup of coffee. Like, Batman will actually learn from him, and T'Challa will always beat him. So, and I'm saying that as a shameless Batman fan. So that's the biggest compliment I can give someone, a character, a superhero character, that, what?
I can confirm, every time one of these episodes ends, we always somehow start talking about Batman, who I don't read. You can't find a single Batman book on the shelf, but somehow she always steers it into Batman.
Right. I always talk about Batman. I always talk about Batman. And the thing is, like, one of the things, like, this is the last point, I'm going to end this, that one of the things I liked about Priest is, though, he talks about a lot of political commentary. Like, he makes a lot of different political and social commentary, but it's never hitting you in the head. It's mostly in the quiet moments, and it's mostly like kind of left for you to decide or you to discuss about, like the same way we're doing. And it's like, to me, it's very refreshing, and it's something that the only other person I've seen done it was in the DMZ series by Brian Wood. So to me, it was like very refreshing, and I enjoyed this series so much, and I cannot wait for the omnibus to come out so I can buy it and I can read certain issues, especially that one where T'Challa calls Captain America his brother. That's the end.
It was a huge, I stopped me in my tracks. I love those moments in a comic book. And I think when comic books are done well, comics can be good. They can be literature. When they're done well, those moments get you in a different way than they do in a book, because you've got this visual representation of a character, and the comic book is controlling the flow of information for you, the speed that you can consume it. You just, as fast as you read a comic book, and I'm a very quick reader in books and comic books, you have to stop and appreciate the art and the paneling, or you don't get the whole story. And so I think because of that rhythm, when you get to a really heartfelt moment like that just makes you stop, it's so powerful, because that's a thing that a comic can do in a really unique way, different than the way a book can do it.
All I could think about was that moment from the Infinity War trailer where it's like, get this man a shield. And I was just like, yes.
So before we can't contain the movie commentary from Maria anymore, let me give my thoughts on those Christopher Priest wrap-ups, and then we're going to relaunch. I put the link in the chat to the subsequent movie chat video. So, so what was my first question? You asked me 2 questions. Don't make me interview myself. Ask me about the Christopher Priest run.
So yeah, what was your expectation, and what did you think about it? Like, what were you thinking going into it?
I had read Hudlin Black Panther, and that was like my main experience with Black Panther. And so I knew that this was like super formative, but Hudlin, I don't know how to explain it. Hudlin gets much closer to him, and he writes him much more as this person who's struggling with being a king. And in that, he gets a little bit, I think, sanded down because he doesn't have as much mystique to him. And he does start to feel like another Namor, another Doctor Doom, another Magneto,
Right.
who just happens to have like a firm moral compass. And so I think when I was starting to read this book, and especially when you see like he's in the hood and he's investigating the death of this girl, I really expected that we were just going to get this like very morality play, like I have to
Right.
because people are disadvantaged here and it's my job and I was really honestly fundamentally surprised to find out that it wasn't about that at all, and that it was
Right.
really about him as a king. None of his runs up until this point had been as much about him being a king, and I don't think any of the runs after this point had been as much about him being a king. Parts of Hudlin's run until Ta-Nehisi Coates' run.
Right.
So I think it like invented that concept, and I just found myself surprised like day after day as I was reading this comic book to really discover, and why I think issue 30 is the best issue of this run is that it's a comic book about a sovereign and it's not a comic book about a superhero. And it takes you a while because the first arc is like so pithy and funny that it doesn't even occur to you how much of a twist that Priest is putting on the concept of Black Panther until you're like a whole year into it in issue 12 and you're like, wait a second, there's no superhero part of this superhero story.
Right. And honestly, that I'm actually already reading Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, and I kind of missed Priest, like his like kind of humor and things like that. So it's I don't know. I had a blast reading it. I enjoyed it so much that I was not expecting it, and that's one of the reasons I actually got it from the library, because I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'm probably not gonna enjoy it, so let's get them from the library and kind of see how it is. But now I'm like, if there is no omnibus by the end of this year, I'm buying them. I'm buying the collected editions if they don't run out of print. I don't think they will, but
Yeah. I actually have it in floppies too, because I didn't even before I got them before the movie was announced. Because I was like, how am
right.
I ever going to have this run? And then, of course, after you drop like however many dollars on floppies of something, then Marvel always announces the collection.
Right.
I would say for people who are just coming to this, look, I'm not going to pretend there's no slow parts of this run. I basically at the end of every one of these chunks that we've read, I get really fatigued because I feel like Priest like starts to make it this big thing that I don't want it to be. So I love issues 1 to 5. I loved issues like 13, 14, 15. I loved this up until the last arc. So I'm not promising you're going to love every part of it. There are slow parts. There are talky parts. But this is like fundamentally who Black Panther is. Like if you really want to know what is up with Black Panther, you probably need to get these 2 books and read the first 35 issues, because this is what's up with Black Panther. Like his whole geography as a character is laid out in the run that we read in the past 3 weeks.
Right, and also for the future listeners or viewers, I can tell you that if you come to this, like if you want to read Priest because you really liked, My Girl Okia or Nakia, oh, this is not it.
Not going to be satisfying.
No, yeah. This is not it. And also, no Shuri. So
that's true. Like, Shuri does not come up at all. So we're bursting with anticipation to talk about the movie. So I want to thank everybody so much for joining us for Black Panther Book Club. We are coming back for one more book club. It's for Ta-Nehisi Coates' run. He's a MacArthur Genius Grant Award-winning, amazing nonfiction author and memoir author. And it's amazing that he's writing a Marvel comic book, and it's amazing that it's Black Panther. And it's also had a big impact on the movie. And so I invite you to join us at the same cat time, same cat channel next week, 8 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock New Zealand in the afternoon to join us for our final Black Panther discussion. We actually have cooked up a potential March book to read and discuss, but we might do it in a little bit of a different format. So we'll talk about that next week too. Freya, any final sign off before we switch over to movie chat?
No, read Priest Black Panther. That's all I can say. If you are interested in learning more about character, this is it. Read it.
All right, we will see you in movie chat in 2 minutes. Thank you so much for watching this awesome Black Panther book club discussion brought to you by Crushing Comics and my wonderful co-host, FanGirl herself, all the way around the world, Faria.
Bye.
Bye.